we get to know the faith and those who live it. I'm your host, Renee Kranz. In the studio with me today, I have Father Mark Lichter. Welcome, Father Lichter.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's good to be with you.
Yeah. So Father Lichter has never been on Catholic Views before with me. He said he thinks he's been on with Jerry some time ago, possibly. But I wanted to have Father Lichter come in to talk about the life issue. He's been a priest for how many years?
32 years.
32 years. And you've been pretty much talking about this issue the whole time you've been a priest.
Yeah,
at some point or another.
Yeah, I would say that I've probably talked about it at least once every year for 32 years.
Yeah.
During my time as a priest.
Yeah. So we wanted to bring Father Lichter on. He is the parochial vicar at Divine Mercy Pastorate, which is Christ the King, St. Mary, and JP2 out in Harrisburg, right?
Yes, that's right.
Where do you spend your time in one place more than the other? Or do you guys rotate all the time?
We rotate it, so it's quite nice.
Is
we
it?
go from one place to the other place and just switch off weekends.
Yeah.
So it's really good.
Yeah. Have you been able to get to know a lot of the people in the parishes so far?
It's a little bit more challenging,
Yeah.
but it's kind of a blessing, I think, for the people in the sense that they get a different priest in every once in a while, but it is harder to get to know people.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully that'll come over time.
Yeah. Yeah, over time it works.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it is kind of a blessing for people because let's just say they don't like Father Lichter, but they really like Father Doty.
That happens.
I doubt it. I mean, I bet they like all of you because the three priests, Father Doty and Father Paul Rutten and yourself were there, I think are all really great priests. So they're a lucky pastorate for sure.
Well, we're blessed to be priests.
Yeah.
And to serve.
Yeah.
So we're grateful for that.
Good. All right. Well, let's jump into our topic. So how do you see life? Not your life as a priest, but life in general as a priest. Like, and why is it important to understand that life, especially in the womb, is sacred?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's been dear to my heart as a priest.
Yeah.
Over the years, come from a family of 11.
Oh wow.
And my parents, were very generous in their having children and that kind of thing, and it's just always been a big part of me in terms of appreciation for children and kids, and it starts in at the moment of conception.
Yeah.
And we have a real strong belief in that, and that's been like that forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we think about it,
I think when you grow up in a big family, you see that just differently because you have the great fortune of having lots of brothers and sisters and just all of that camaraderie and support and love that comes with all that. There are challenges. I mean, we can't pretend there aren't challenges, but that all of those people in your family, all your brothers and sisters, all are so different, but so sacred and so much dignity from God.
Yeah, and I can't imagine not having one of them in our family.
Right.
And there's something about it. A bigger family is such a blessing. At the same time, it's messy.
Yes.
But as I get older, I see where it's such a blessing to be able to come home and see everybody together, and there just is a camaraderie there that really is beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay. So you have to, I shouldn't say have to, you get to, and we have to because of the world we live in, have to talk about this topic, as you said, at least once a year or maybe more. When you talk about this in your homilies, of course, we think about the dignity that God endows to all of us because we're made in his image. So the unborn children really bear the face of Jesus.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I can't help, this last time that I was preaching, I can't help but look out into the congregation and see little children, babies that are being held. And I actually said it at the homily that they are the face of God.
Yeah.
They're the face of God. And it's just beyond my imagination that anybody could take the life of a child like that,
right,
when they desire it so much too.
Right.
There's such a contradiction in our culture.
It is.
One minute they're saying, we want to have a child, and then the next minute they're saying we have a right to get rid of that child.
Right. Right.
So it's really kind of a hard one to swallow sometimes.
It is. When you talk about it in your homilies, is there a focus for you? Is there a particular direction you come at it, do you think, or do you change it every year?
It's changed every year, depending upon the situation. Like this year, it's been on the Amendment G,
Right.
to vote no on that with the life issue. And our bishop has been very, very strong with us as priests to be vocal about that. And there's a deep appreciation for the bishop, for Bishop DeGrood, for putting it out there.
Yep.
It takes a lot of courage.
It does.
And for the priest to have it's kind of a permission from the bishop to go out and really talk about it.
Right.
I think that's really important.
Yeah. Have you gotten a lot of pushback at all?
There's some pushback.
How do you handle that?
I try to be calm.
Yeah.
There's sometimes it might get a little heated
Sure.
outside
Yeah.
The church, but just to try to, to not, let it get away from you or whatever,
Right.
but just to
Right.
try to talk and listen.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a
people.
big deal, is to listen,
Yeah.
try to understand where they're coming from.
What happens is a lot of times they get into this thing that it's political.
Yeah.
And I think people shut off automatically when they hear the word abortion or they hear something that might be on the news or whatever.
Or on a ballot. Yeah.
And I always, a lot of times, preface the homily by saying that this has nothing to do, it's connected to politics, but it's really a moral issue.
It is. Yeah.
And we have to speak about moral issues. And we're commissioned, and we have, with the bishop's authority too, to be able to tell people what's going on and what's happening in our lives and what's important.
Right. Yeah, it's really a moral issue that has been kind of drug into politics.
Yes.
Unfortunately. And it is, I think it does help with when the bishop kind of really rallies a lot of support around his priests.
And it really, the thing that it does is it really helps the priests. I think priests, I'm just speaking kind of for myself too, but it would be, a lot of times we get very afraid or fearful of touching some of those things, those hard issues, those hard teachings. And the bishop is right out there with us, leading us, the face of it.
Yep.
And then it becomes easier
Yeah.
for us to say something because we have the bishop's back, and the bishop is there supporting us.
Right.
And
he
there's
has
a
your
deep
back.
appreciation for that.
Yeah. Yeah, because Bishop has been very vocal about it so far in his homilies during TV Mass and things like that. So you definitely have lots of backup, don't you?
Yeah, no, and it's good. Not all bishops do that all the time.
That's very true.
And then if you're a priest, a lot of times you kind of set it to the side because it's not always that fun to talk about.
Right.
And then, it just can be challenging to do the right thing.
So you've been a priest for 32 years. I imagine you have probably experienced having to walk with someone who has either had an abortion or a family who has been touched by that. Can you tell us about any of those experiences without betraying confidences or anything like that?
Right. I would say that, one of the greatest gifts is the fact that people can come to confession.
Yeah.
And so there's the seal of confession, and the mercy of God is overwhelming. And that's happened a lot of times where men or women will come in and confess that.
Yeah.
That's very consoling to them. And usually in those situations, I try to refer them to other helps.
Sure. Yeah.
Like the Project Rachel, different retreats, that kind of thing, to go to our diocese webpage and to look that up. And I've been with other people that have talked to me in my office, obviously. Sure. It's very sensitive area, and it's really hard for a lot of women and men to talk about it.
Yeah.
It just kind of sticks in their heart, and I think maybe it's kind of shoved under the rug a little bit in their consciousness. And then it's to help them bring that out. And I know in sending people to a retreat, it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
They're able to work it through, and then it's not just confession, because it's where they've lost a child, and they admit it, and the culture we live in denies it.
Right.
There's no problem with it. There's no problem. You can do whatever you need to do, and it's just, it's not a human being.
Right.
But it is.
Yeah.
So you can't deny that.
Well, and especially I think for women for, I can't imagine there have to be very few women who probably don't feel this, but even if you're thinking ahead of time that it's not a child, afterward, you know something isn't right. I mean, it's going to hit you.
Right.
And that's what we hear from women who have been through this, is that it's not something you can just walk away from and be okay.
Right. So it can be a physical thing, emotional, spiritual, psychological. All those things come to play in that. So it's something that a lot of times they have to work through.
Yeah.
And realize. I think sometimes it's just we don't deal with it.
Right.
And we as a culture, even as priests, we probably don't do real well with that all the time.
Right.
Maybe we say the wrong thing when we're given the homily even.
Sure.
I've had some challenges where you say something about abortion, and then what about the poor woman or man that's involved in it?
Mm-hmm.
And somehow to have that compassion and mercy, and how God is there to touch them, and that it can be forgiven.
Yeah.
That's another one, that it can be forgiven. But we do kind of put it aside.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing that people maybe don't always think about or realize is that the church is really here to walk with women and families and men who've gone through this, to help them heal. That it's not about shaming or accusing, but to offer forgiveness and healing.
Yeah.
So.
And I think sometimes the priests get a little more fearful, because when they preach to a broader crowd, we know that there's probably somebody in there that's been touched by having an abortion or whatever.
Yeah.
And, it's how to address that at the same time being strong about, that it's not right, but at the same time there is compassion and mercy, and the Lord Jesus can heal us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's coming to that conclusion eventually.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. If you just joined us, we're talking with Father Mark Lichter about life and the abortion issue. So, Father, for many of us, it's actually, I think about this often right now, because of course from the diocesan level we are doing everything we can to try to defeat Amendment G that's coming up on our ballot. But this is a fight that we seem to have over and over and over again. And, 2 years ago, you have the overturning of Roe v. Wade. You think, great, this is great. And then we're right back, kind of, you feel like you're right back where you started, where you're constantly fighting this. We knew we would have to. So how do you think how did we get here? How did we get to a point in our country where it's okay? And maybe we've been here longer than we think, but in the last 50 years, how did we get here? And why are we so divided on this issue? Why are we as humans just can't seem to figure this out?
Yeah, it's really the evil one going at it.
Yeah.
And that's the definition of the evil one, is really division, accuser, divider.
It's very true.
The one that causes that division. But sure, he loves to see this division going on, the polarization, the different things like that. I think what's most important is for us to continue to think about, like in Amendment G, it would be, it's not just about the choice of the mother. Sometimes they talk about the health of the mother, whatever. But they're missing the child.
Right.
And I don't think that's ever explained to anybody. That there's actually more than just one person that they choose, but it affects all kinds of people, including the child in the womb, family members, extended family members, societal, all the way out to where all of a sudden that child's not out in the congregation.
Right. Yes.
And is gone. And we don't really think about the ramifications of it.
Yeah.
So a lot of times they'll say stuff about it's the women's right, but that Amendment G is really vague.
Yes.
And they've got the 3 sections really, and it's not really that long.
Right.
It's to really invite people to learn more about it.
Yes.
And to be informed and to read it and see what it actually says.
Yep.
And you realize how it's worded in such a subtle sinister.
Tricky.
It's a sinister way,
Yeah.
really. And again, I think that's a sign of the evil one.
Yes.
Manifesting in that language even.
Right.
It's like a subterfuge of what really is going on. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so it's really to understand that it's really the most, what would you call it, the most liberal, radical way that we would allow abortion
Yes.
in our state of South Dakota. And it's also radical to change the Constitution.
Yes, it is.
You know, so just to think about that, first of all, why would we change the Constitution? Takes away from the legislature.
Right. The
And
people
then
we
people
elected
don't
to
have-
do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Then we don't have the wherewithal to legislate it anymore. And so it's pretty extreme to
Yeah.
put it in the Constitution. And then people are kind of lulled to sleep,
Yeah.
you know, and they don't vote. And so there can be a real strong problem with that.
Yeah. 'Cause they might think, oh, this is South Dakota. We'll defeat that.
Right.
Do not assume that.
No, exactly.
Do
And
not
that's
assume that.
that's the exact point. So, I mean, when you think about South Dakota, it's a pro-life state, and it's been strong. Their legislative statutes and everything that's gone through have been very strong pro-life, protecting the you know, all the people that are involved in it,
Right.
making sure that they have their health concerns taken care
Yes.
of, allowing mothers and fathers to be a part of their children's decision. We can't even imagine that. All of a
Oh.
sudden, we have a constitution that says the parents don't have any rights.
Right.
And it literally allows abortion on demand all the way through those 3 trimesters,
Yes.
all the way to birth.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's like a no-brainer when you read it. If you're, you know, and again, I think that sometimes I'm going a little crazy.
Oh, you're
here,
totally fine.
But the thing that's fascinating to me is the Knights of Columbus do such a wonderful job of providing ultrasounds
Yes. Yes.
in clinics all around the world. And if a woman sees the ultrasound of their child, they usually don't abort. It's up
Right.
into the 90% where they don't abort. And so that, I mean,
That should tell us
if they
something.
see it,
Yeah.
they just can't imagine, you know, getting rid of that child.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one thing you mentioned how radical it is. Now, we don't very often agree with Planned Parenthood, hardly ever. But this is actually so radical that Planned Parenthood and the ACLU are not backing this bill. I don't know if people realize that,
That's
but
interesting.
they are not backing this bill.
And what's the reasoning
Specifically,
behind that? Is
because it's too extreme.
too extreme.
Yeah. There's not enough safety issues around it. Now, we don't back it for different reasons. So, but just think about that.
Yeah,
They're not even backing it. So we have to take a step back and say, okay, hold on. Let's look at this a little more clearly, and is this really the right thing for South Dakota? And I think
Right.
overwhelmingly people would say no if they really looked at that.
So a big part of it would be to vote,
Yes.
and to vote no, as the bishop continues to talk about. We continue to
Yep.
talk about it, and to be informed, and then to place it on other people, talk to people.
Yes.
Because I walk up to people before I gave my homily the other week. I just talked to people wherever I went, and I just say, "Do you know about Amendment G?" And every one of them didn't know.
Right.
They had no idea what was going on. So it's kind of a way, a hidden way that they come in and kind of sidewhack us, and we're taken off balance, and then all of a sudden it's law.
Right.
And that's happened in several states already,
Yeah.
where they're pro-life states, and all of a sudden they've voted in this extreme abortion law.
Yeah.
So we have to be really careful with that.
Yeah, we have to share the truth so
And-
people
yeah.
know what this is. We have a minute or two. I really want to know from you. We often say that the only way we're going to get through this issue ever is if we can change hearts, and we have to change a lot of
Oh,
hearts.
yeah, that's good.
Do you know, how do we do this? How do we change hearts?
Well, I don't think we do.
Okay.
We don't change hearts. The Lord does.
Yeah.
And I always said, this is how I kind of ended the homily the other day, was, you know, we feel really inadequate. We feel like we can't change anything, and you're right, we can't. It's the Lord that has to touch our hearts and change us, change the culture.
Yeah.
And the Lord has a hold of it.
Yeah.
The Lord has won the victory. And so we have to keep turning to the Lord and saying, Lord, you got it. You got it. I don't, but I'm going to do my part.
Right. Right.
That's to get informed. That's to be pro-life. That's to be a person that has faith. And it's still that whole thing of Ephesians. I just want to quote this. It just says, Ephesians 6, this is something to keep in your hearts. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the world forces, or this darkness against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. So it's essentially a spiritual battle that's going on.
It really is.
And a lot of times the spiritual battle, when they raise up great saints, it's because it is impossible. And it's only possible with God.
Yeah.
God is the one that's going to bring us through.
Yeah.
And we know that the victor's already been won.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way to end it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Father Lichter, thank you for coming in and talking about this sometimes very difficult issue. I really appreciate your willingness to do that and your willingness to help people understand what Amendment G is and to vote no.
Yes, vote no and keep praying.
Yes, keep
praying and fasting. That's big.
Yes.
Praying and fasting, letting people know, be informed.
Yeah.
And vote.
Yeah. In fact, we are recommending, I'm glad you mentioned that. We're recommending, and we'll be kind of putting this in the Bishop's Bulletin and so on for October. After Mass every Sunday, stay a minute, say an Our Father, Hail Mary, Glory be, or St. Michael, the Archangel prayer, something like that, for the defeat of Amendment G. Fast in some way, or give something up, do some sort of abstain from something, but really put in that kind of, if it's even just a little bit of kind of spiritual warfare against the other side.
Yes.
Would be really helpful.
I appreciate that.
So,
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you again for being here, Father
It was
Lichter.
good to be with you.
Yeah. If you want to learn more about Amendment G and what all is there, you can go to sfcatholic.org/respectlife. There are plenty of resources there to help you be able to talk to the people you love. That's it for us today. Hope you'll join us again next week for more Catholic Views.